All right, welcome my friends to the next episode here, the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A. We take a fundamental approach to fitness, giving you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle for better results that actually last. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project. And as always, today's episode is sponsored by the RDP support team over at Amazon.com, all the books in the RDP library, NOSC suspension calisthenics. I got my gym set back up now that all my photos are finished for my next upcoming book on progressive and weighted calisthenics. I'm very excited. I got my gym set back up. And also, let me address the elephant in the room. Yes, I know my voice is a little scraggly right now. I am coming off of a really bit of a nasty cold there, so not to be afraid. I got my tea, and apologize to anybody if I cough during the session here and you're wearing headphones. Again, if you listen to the audio that I post on the podcast destinations, I edit all that stuff out. So if it's driving you crazy, you can just listen to it there as well. So before ado, let me take a swig of tea here. And away we go. Oh, that's already better. Nothing like hot tea. I get this stuff. It's called Fastlane. It's only available at Celestial Seasonings here in Boulder, Colorado, either in store or at the factory store or online. It's like nature's Red Bull. It's great. It's just a black tea, but it's basically like a great pre-workout. It's got a nice bit of kick to it and stuff. So let's jump into today's topic. Today is kind of the second part. Last week, I talked about all the basic milestones we need to cover when it comes to building muscle in that episode. And today we're doing the same thing when it comes to fat loss and weight management. And one of the things that I really wanted to hone in on today is the fact that most approaches to trying to lose weight are inherently very limited. And there's a lot that the experts with whatever their diet or their workout program is, they're not telling you that their program is inherently limited, because almost all of these focus on a very narrow range of influences that, while not insignificant and not unimportant, are not even close to the whole story. You know, you've got a lot of programs out there that are like, it's all about carbs, or it's about hormones, or it's about insulin, or it's about glucagon, or it's about inflammation, or it's about, glycemic index, or it's about fat storage, or it's about a heart rate, or it's about the fat burning zone, or it's about cardio, or it's about all these other little things. Now, none of these things are inconsequential. They all matter, but that's the reason why it's important to get this out into the open, is that almost every expert who has their fat loss program will say it's about X. But the thing is, no matter what X is, whatever they're talking about, it's a very limited approach. And a lot of times you have these programs and they'll say it's about X. And by the way, it's not about these other things that other coaches talk about. It's not about fat. It's not about carbs. It's not about calories. It's not about cardio. It's not about exercise, right? In order to make the case that their little corner is the thing that's most responsible, they'll also tell you, ignore everything else. And that, my friends, is at a huge detriment to you, because fat loss, as we learned from a fundamental approach, is not ever due to one thing. And what's more important for one person to lose weight may be very different from another person to lose weight. One person may need to do more activity and be more active. Another person may already be plenty active and they need to eat less, or they need to address the diet side. So no matter what position you take, you're going to be wrong most of the time. It's like I always say, it's kind of like telling someone they should drive their car one speed, like 45 miles an hour. Never drive your car at any other speed than 45 miles an hour. Now, is 45 miles an hour an appropriate speed to drive your car at? Sure, but only some of the time, only in certain circumstances. So whenever we take a dogmatic approach and we say, this is the type of diet you should be following, or this is the type of exercise you should be doing if you want to lose weight, that's like saying, drive your car at only 45 miles an hour all the time, which means that most of the time you're going to be wrong. Most of the time you're going to be too fast or too slow. And on the off chance that you are at the right speed, it's by luck. It has nothing to do with science. It's nothing to do with discipline. It's luck. And I, for one, don't want to trust too much on luck. All right. Hey, Sniffrat saying I've got some camera issues. What do I have for camera issues? Now, I'll tell folks I'm trying something here where I usually don't stream to multiple locations. This is the first time I'm streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So I'm doing all three, but I usually only go to YouTube because in the past I had some issues with just one of those. But I'm seeing everything fine on my end here. So let me know if things are still kind of a little bit funky camera wise, but I'm looking at it just fine. Again, I'm shooting on a full frame camera here. Yeah, Ben is saying, why am I in 144p? I have no idea, my friends. That doesn't make any sense to me. Check your own settings. Let me see. Won't get comments. Let me see if there's something I can mess around with here. See if I can edit the YouTube here on anything. No, I'm not seeing any camera settings there. And this has been a very big thing that I'm really kind of having trouble with. Because when I look back on the playback of my videos and stuff on like the YouTube channel, because they're there, the video quality is terrible. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why. Because everything on my end is as good as I can get. I've got a full frame camera that cost me thousands of dollars. I've got a very high speed internet connection. I basically went to the internet, provider, and I was like, max everything. I just want the best of everything. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on. So it may just need to be audio for right now, folks. But let's see what we can do about that. Maybe it's because the bandwidth is split. Let me see if I can't maybe shut off. Let me try something here. I'll shut off Facebook and Twitter for right now and see if that improves things. Let's see here. I'll take off Facebook. Maybe something I need to upgrade on my streaming service end of things. All right, let's see if that improved anything there on the StreamYard. But yeah. So how's that been, Ben? I just put it only on YouTube. I'm no longer on Facebook or Twitter. Let's see if I've got another setting here. It's crazy how many different settings there are. Yep, I'm showing camera definition at 720. Yeah, hotkeys, audio, general, output. Yep, I am maxed. Everything on my end has got to be 720 or better. So yeah, let me know. But anyway, let's get back on topic here. So when it comes to understanding weight loss and stuff, when it comes to a fundamental approach, remember that your results aren't due to the method you use. Your weight is not controlled by your diet. It's not controlled by your exercise program. It's not about how many sets and reps you do. It's not about what kind of exercises you do in the gym. Those things are not controlling your weight. If it was, then only people who use those methods would have control over their weight to any degree, and everyone else would not, of any kind. And this is a very simple anecdotal test that we can always apply to the real world. Because whenever someone's like, oh, in order to control your weight or in order to be lean, you have to have this kind of diet or this kind of exercise program or do this kind of training. But you have to consider the fact that there are 7 billion people on the planet right now. And there have been billions of people before us. And every single human being right now has fluctuating levels of body fat. We all lose body fat at some point in our lives to some degree. We all gain body fat at some point in our lives. So it's impossible to single out any particular method because there's no such thing as a universal method. There's no form of exercise that every human being on earth through the history of humanity has all done. There's never been a one-to-one correlation between a habit and fat loss. It's always helter-skelter, hit or miss. So we can't justifiably say that it's this food or this ingredient or this diet that causes the outcome. Because if it was, it would be a one-to-one correlation. And it never is. Excuse me here. See how the video quality is coming back up. Let me know here, folks. Yeah, video should not be blurry. So, so when it comes to understanding what's really responsible for the way fitness works, we recognize that it's not about our habits. It's about the fundamental processes of mother and human nature. And when it comes to nutrition, particularly fat loss, we have a process of consumption versus expenditure, intake versus output, in other words. And science has kind of really simplified this down into caloric expenditure. And I know a lot of people, they don't like the calorie model, but tough, because that's the best one we've got right now to explain what the hell is going on when it comes to fluctuations in weight. And we've tried to break it. We've tried to test against it, and we keep trying to test against it. And it's never been found at fault. We often think we found fault with it. You know, every new diet comes out, every new workout program comes out. They think they've got it figured out. They're like, oh, it's not the calories, it's this other thing. But then they keep going down the rabbit hole of research on that hormone or leptin or, lysine or whatever they think it is. And it still always ends up at the end of the day, you're just consuming less or burning more, or a combination of the two. It always comes down to that foundation. But this is a good thing, because what the fundamental process teaches us is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of influences to that caloric balance process. It's not just hormones. It's not just what your workout is. It's not just how many carbs you eat or what time of day you're doing or intermittent fasting. These are all strategies to influence that process. And you can do that any way that you like. There's no diet you have to follow. There's no workout program you have to do. What we do need to do is try to manage your caloric expenditure and your caloric intake. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. Sure, you can do it with fasting. Sure, you can do it with low carb diets. Sure, you can do it with tons of cardio. People do it all the time. But it also happens in the absence of those things. So you have freedom and choice, my friends, to do the things you want to do and not get too hung up on feeling like you're being forced to do things you don't want to do. Let's get to a couple questions here. I'll try and get to some questions, folks, even though my voice is absolutely shot. I was really, really hoping it would be in better shape for today, but I guess not. My apologies. But Jonathan is asking, hey, Matt, people say it's best to work a muscle 10 to 20 sets per week. Does that mean arms generally or biceps and triceps? If the latter, do rows, chin-ups count towards bicep sets? Absolutely, you're right. So remember, that's not exercise specific. It's just saying use the muscle for something, okay? So remember, fundamentally, muscles are very, very simple tissues. They have an origin and an insertion point, and they contract to bring those two together, or at least create force between those 2 points. It does not matter what the exercise is. It does not matter what the tool is. It doesn't matter if it's compound or isolated or whatever, because muscle only knows I'm stretched between these 2 points and I'm trying to pull them together. That's all you've got to play with. Now, I love this 10 to 20 set rule because it's such a broad range. It's like, show me a program that doesn't fit that. That's kind of like someone's like, how many times should I work a muscle each week? Probably between 1 to 6. It's like, show me something that's not going to fit that. But yeah, just work it a few times a week with whatever type of train you like. Because if my bicep is working to contract with curls or rows, to the muscle, it's all the same thing. It doesn't know the difference between them. The difference is created in our mind, which is extremely important to recognize, because a lot of times differences that we have from one exercise to another are self-imposed, right? It's kind of like this idea of like different grips work different muscles. Yeah, because we're making the muscles do different things. We're expecting it. But I don't care what pulling movement you're doing, your biceps should be working with that. So if you're doing an exercise and you're like, yeah, really got it in the biceps, but then you switch your grip and you're like, not in the biceps at all, that's your fault. That's not the exercise. I don't care what you're doing. If your elbow's bending, your biceps should be going crazy. So if your biceps are not engaging, that's on you. You've got to engage your biceps. Remember, exercises do not work muscles. You engage your muscles to do the exercise. And when you get more control over that proactive muscle tension, that's a total game changer. That changes everything. Everything about the safety and the satisfaction and the effectiveness of your workouts skyrockets. Because again, you're getting down to the fundamental reason why your muscles work in the first place, rather than relying on blind luck and chance. So use your muscles that many times and choose whatever exercises you fancy or have proficiency with. So yeah, more feedback here. Yeah, it's like nothing changed. Okay, that's good to know. So I'll post it on Facebook and the Twitter next time. USB connection cable. Again, I did the best I could there. It's a direct connection. Yeah, it's my usual camera. It's not. It's the Sony Corp uses a new streaming software on it to use it as that, but I don't use it. I didn't buy it for this purpose. It's my usual YouTube camera because I wanted more control over the ability to crop in and not lose the quality, like I was with the iPhone and stuff. It's funny, like I used to always have, GoPros and my phone and stuff for all of my YouTube videos, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. That's really good. And then I finally ponied up and I've got a full frame camera now. It's like, I don't know if it's really that different. But now I look at all my old footage and I'm like, God, why is my old footage such crap? It's like, well, now I'm used to higher end stuff. Let's see. Dan Jones asking here, Matt, what advice would you give to someone who wants to compete in the weighted dip, weighted pull up, and weighted back squat? Well, you gotta do those exercises. Remember, you gain that which you challenge. Hire a coach. So you're talking about competing. Now, you're talking about sport now. Sport and fitness are totally different scenarios. You could be seeing someone do a weighted dip in the gym, and one is doing it for fitness, and someone is doing it for sport. They're completely different. Completely. Do not use sports to get in shape. Do not use fitness for sport, because they are so different from one another that if you take a fitness mindset to sport or a sport mindset to fitness, you have the very, very likely outcome that you're going to sabotage your results for the other. And I'll probably do a podcast or something on this in a latter episode or something right now. But that's my best advice for you. Hire a coach, someone who knows how to get the most out of your performance for those, because that's the biggest difference. When you are training for sport, you care about performance. When you are training about fitness, you care about adaptation. And they're very different things, very, very different things. And if you go for one, you could hurt the other. You could compromise the other. So if you're really doing it for the sake of fitness, you could be hurting your ability to compete if you train for fitness, or vice versa. All right. Speaking of weight gain here. So we've got this cycle, this fundamental cycle, intake versus expenditure that I was talking about. This is how fitness works. Everything in fitness works based on this cycle. When it comes to diet, and particularly weight, it's intake versus expenditure. It's a cycle that's always going. We have no control over it, but we can influence it, right? And this is one of the seeds that a lot of dogmatic approaches to diet and exercise will trick you with. Is like, oh, if you control this part of your diet, you can control your weight. No, you can't. That's impossible. It's a product of Mother Nature. You can't control your weight any more than I can control the weather or control the earth going around the sun, right? You cannot control Mother Nature. It is on autopilot, but we can influence it. Like a surfer riding the wave. The surfer does not control the wave. They just learn how to use the wave to their benefit. It's the same exact thing with weight loss and all things fitness. We can't control the natural processes that are truly controlling our health, fitness, and weight management, but we can influence it to some degree. So what we look at is, what can we do to influence that, to try to have some more control over our weight? We'll never have total control, because there's always influences to that process that you have no control over at all. Okay, some things you have control over. Some things you have some control over if you really work at it, maybe some of the time. And other things like genetics, body type and stuff, nope, sorry, no control over that. Like people are like, I got all my body fat in my belly. What can I do about that? Answer, nothing. That's where you store fat. That's how you were built. That's what you can have less fat there. Sure, absolutely. We can influence that. But where you store fat, that's genetics. That's not something we can have any control over. So that's something that we don't want to put too much of our attention towards, because so much of our fitness culture is about wasting your time and money and energy and effort over things you have no control over. So I have much more of a perspective of it's better to focus on the things you can control. Like right now, my body's fighting this virus. I've got a crap voice right now. Do I have any control over that? No, there's nothing I can do about it right now, but I can get a good night's sleep and I can drink my tea. And that's what I can do. And oftentimes that is enough. That is enough. So it's something that you can gain some perspective with. It's the whole idea of, focus on what you can control. Don't worry about the things you can't, sort of thing. But, most of our beliefs in our fitness culture are not based on truth or science. They're based on marketing. And the things that sell well are the things that promise us control over the things we can't control. Because inherently, that's what we all want. We all want control over the things that we can't control. And when someone says, you can't have control over it, don't listen to the other guys. They don't know what they're talking about. You can't have control over it. It's an enticing idea, and it's one we want to believe, and it's really easy to sell us on anything that we want to believe. So going back to our first question here. So he's Mr. Penguin here. Is asking, how can I improve my dip numbers? So remember, folks, there's a very big difference between fitness and performance sport. So here we're talking about performance. This is not about fitness. This is not about building muscle. We're trying to get our dip numbers up. What is that going to do? It's going to make you do more dips. That's about all you can expect from that. So whenever we're trying to improve performance, we always want to look at it as a case of practice. Practice. When we want to be in shape, we want to create a stimulus. When we want to improve performance, we need to practice. And when we practice, that means do the thing, always try to do it better in some way, shape, or form. This is why I said get a coach, because a coach knows how to do it better than you do. And they can also look at it from many different angles. If your goal is, I want to do more dips, so I'm just going to try and do more dips, that's fine. But there's like 15 things that I can look at on a dip and identify weaknesses that can help you get more reps. But if your goal is, I'm just going to do more dips, you're ignoring all those opportunities. So that's why a good coach can help highlight those things perspective-wise. Now, I could tell you things, but know that I am guessing, back stability, shoulder stability, elbow alignment. Are you moving forward? Are you fully locking out your elbows? What's your lower body doing? Are you keeping glute and ab engagement for stability in your lower body? How high is your dip bar? How wide are your dip bars? Are your dip bars angled? Are you doing them on rings? Where are you looking? What's your spinal alignment? These things influence your ability to do your dips. But I don't know what they look like for you. So that's why in-person coaching is always the gold standard, because I can look at you in 10 seconds, identify 5 things that can help versus 10 months of hunting on how to do more dips on the internet. Excuse me. So you want to practice. Now, in the name of practice, what you're looking for is keeping fatigue levels low, because fatigue is the enemy of practice in most cases. Sometimes we want to practice being able to work with fatigue. Like if you were a basketball player and you're like, dude, I get gassed out real quick. Okay, then we're going to run drills and then have you shooting 3-pointers so you can know what it's like to shoot 3-pointers under fatigue. But fatigue is the enemy of practice. It's the enemy of proficiency. And you're looking to get better at the dip. So you want to have your workouts programmed in such a way that you keep the fatigue levels relatively low. So not going to failure, saving several reps in the tank, and practicing the dips as much as you can every day if you can. and more importantly, like I said, have something you're trying to improve upon. Keeping your shoulders packed, elbows in alignment with the hands, keeping your abs engaged and your glutes tight so that way you have better lower body stability, whatever the case may be. What are you trying to improve in the dip to make your dips better? That's what you want to be looking at. So the approach that we're looking at, the fundamental process, fat loss, right? We have consumption and we have expenditure. Process is going ongoing 24/7. We can't stop this thing. It's on autopilot. So let's look at the two halves of that. First off is expenditure. Now, the big myth out there is that expenditure is exercise. Yes, of course, we expend more calories when we're physically active. But always remember that when we exercise, we don't make anything happen. Nothing is happening when you go out for a run that isn't happening right now, because your metabolic process is always ongoing. When you get more active, you're taking that process and you're speeding it up. That's all you're doing. It's like an idle car and you push on the gas and you rev the engine. That's what you're really doing. So a lot of these weight loss programs that focus on exercise are trying to convince you that when you exercise, you're making something special happen. You're not. Nothing's happening. It's not something that you need to think about because it's on autopilot. And by far and away, the bulk of most people's caloric expenditure happens for metabolic or our base metabolic rate. It's not for physical activity. It's to keep you alive. It's for your heart to be beating and all of the things that you need to be doing in order to survive. So that, for most people, is the bulk of your caloric expenditure. And it's kind of hard to figure that out for yourself, but you can find calculators online. And I usually tell people take like 5 or 6 of them and then take an average of them to get a ballpark estimation of your metabolic rate. Mine, it's roughly around 1,700 calories a day, give or take, right? And that gives you a rough estimate for what that is. So that's the bulk. That's most of people's caloric expenditure on a daily basis. Then, of course, you have your thermic effect of activity. And people are like, good, that's the exercise. I'm like, no, that's not exercise. That is all physical activity. Right now, I'm standing up. So my caloric expenditure for physical activity is increased right now because I'm standing as opposed to sitting. So right now, my body's burning more calories because I'm standing. Is it a lot more or anything? No, it's just a little bit more. I'm moving my hands. I like to move my hands when I talk. This is increasing my caloric expenditure. I'm not exercising. I'm not working out. But it doesn't matter. A calorie burned is a calorie burned, regardless of why it's being burned. You don't need any particular type of special action to burn fat and calories because you're always burning fat and calories 24/7. All I'm doing, if I started doing jumping jacks, is I'm increasing the rate at which it's happening. That's all. So that gives you the freedom. If you want to be active, do whatever you want. Yes, of course, the longer you're active, the more you burn. The more intensely you're active, the more you burn, for sure. But you can do anything you want. Don't worry about forcing yourself to do any particular type of exercise. You're not going to lose weight because you do a particular type of exercise. When I was in college, I lost a lot of weight in my sophomore year because I joined the UVM cycling team. I was exercising a crap ton. I was eating a lot of carbs, a lot of sugar, lots and lots of sugar, and a lot of processed foods. And I couldn't keep weight on to save my life. And I thought at the time it was because of how much I was riding. It wasn't because of the bike riding. It's because I was burning more than I was taking in, like everyone else. It wasn't because I was on a mountain bike. It wasn't because my heart rate was elevated going up App Gap, or riding up Mount Philo. It's one of those things that we get fixated on the method we're using, but it's not the method, it's the process. And I was influencing the process with the mountain biking. And then the third form of caloric expenditure, of course, is thermic effect of food, which is usually fairly minor, usually fairly trivial. It's usually not very big, but it is there. And it is something to be mindful of Some processes for weight loss kind of focus on this a little bit, like protein heavy diets, things that are more about whole foods, high fiber foods, things that are trying to get your body to work harder to digest them, those sorts of things. Does it matter? Yeah. Does it really make that much of a difference? Here and there. But as I tell people, eat a steak because you want to eat a steak, not because it has a 15% increase of the thermic effect of food over chicken or whatever, right? I'm just spitballing numbers here. But it's one of those things that I wouldn't put too much, bank on, so to speak. But nevertheless, the point I'm trying to make is when it comes to expenditure, we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into any type of expenditure, any focus on a way of expending calories. When people come to me and they're looking to lose weight, I always tell them, I want you to go watch a movie this weekend. This is your homework. Watch a movie, came out in the 80s, called Brewster's Millions. Classic Richard Pryor. Tells you everything you need to know about burning calories. It has nothing really to do with fat loss, but the plot is great. So this guy named Brewster, the guy who's always had trouble with money, and his, rich uncle he didn't know about, leaves him $1 million in his will. And in the will, he stipulates, he's like, you can take the $1 million and just free and clear, or if you can manage to spend the $1 million in 1 month, granted this was 30 years ago, so it was harder to do back then. If you can manage to spend the $1 million in a month, then you get my full estate, which is $300 million. So the whole movie is him just compulsively trying to spend money like crazy. And that attitude is the same attitude we need to have if we want to lose weight when it comes to expending calories. Be on the lookout all the time for how to spend. How do I be more active? How do I spend more? Spend every single day. Don't limit yourself. Anytime you're like, I'm going to spend more calories by doing cardio. I'm going to spend calories by eating more protein. I'm going to spend calories by cutting back on carbs, whatever it is. Great. All that's good. But any single one of it's going to be so limited. It's going to be such a small influence that it's probably not going to be sufficient for the total amount of expenditure to really increase to the level it needs to for you to get what you want out of it. And even then, it's only half the equation. Caloric expenditure is only half of it. It's 50%. The other half is diet, which I'll get into here in a second. But let's see if we can go a little higher. Grog is still saying videos, 140p quality. I got to look into that, Grog. I have no idea. I have every setting here maxed. I've got a $2,100 Sony camera. I got the best connections I've got maxed out internet connection. I've got everything ramped up to the max as far as quality. All of my settings are maxed out. All of my equipment is top of the line. I have no idea why this is so bad. And it's very frustrating, but that's me in technology. Give me anything, I will figure out a way to break it. Oh, Goju is saying Brewster's Millions is also a book that was much older before Richard Pryor came out. I did not know that. That's awesome. It's one of those things that probably the book is better than the movie. All right. Grog is saying something to do with rendering. I'll have to look at that. I record my videos in 4K and get 360p for some reason sometimes. Yeah, but this is a live streaming service. I don't know if there's a rendering thing in there. So I use StreamYard, folks, as a service. And I pay a premium for their maximum quality on that as well. I don't do the free anything. I try to maximize quality on everything. So I don't know what they're doing on their end that's causing that to be so crappy. Love your thoughts, though. Love your thoughts. So we've covered expenditure. Now, diet is the other side. A lot of times people will say, oh, it's all diet. It's all diet. 90% diet. Complete BS. Because fundamentally, intake is only 50% of the equation. Now, it may be a big chunk of the changes you make. Yes. A lot of times someone who's like working out in the gym, and they're really active and they're an athlete or whatever, and then they change their diet and they start losing weight. It's like, oh, it's 90% diet. Yeah, but no, the exercise you're doing is still part of it. Your metabolic rate is still part of it. Your NEAT, thermic effective activity, the physical activity you do outside of exercise, that's part of it too. Don't discredit that stuff. Diet is 50%. It's always 50%. It's only 50%. It may be 90% of the conscious changes you're making, but it is never 90%. It's not 90% diet. And I don't like that attitude because it makes diet to be more important than it really is. Of course, it's important. Of course, it's very important to control for diet to some degree, but it doesn't give you the control you think it does. And that's why I make these videos, is because one thing that's worse than the allure of control is the illusion of control. Because if someone can give you the illusion of control, they can control you. Take that as a bigger life lesson outside of fitness. But that's the thing, is the illusion of control is very prevalent in our fitness culture. There's a lot of people out there who want to sell you the illusion of control. And when they give you the illusion of control, they don't need to give you real control to have more power over you. They just need to give you the illusion of control. If anything, the illusion of control is more enticing than actual control itself. This happens all the time with, manipulation organizations, religions, politics, that sort of thing. If they can give you the feeling of control, they'll have more control over you. And that's what happens with a lot of diet and exercise trends, is they don't give you the control, but they give you the feeling of control. People don't like that idea. That's why I get a lot of negative comments and stuff on my videos where I talk about, sugar, important thing to pay attention to, but I eat tons of sugar myself. It's fine. But people don't like to hear that. Why? Because someone has convinced them that they can have control over their health, over their weight, over their performance if they cut out sugar. It's not true. You can't have control from just that. But they've convinced the individual that, no, that's all you need to have control. So when I come along, I'm like, I eat junk food all the time. I eat ice cream, I eat candy bars and stuff. Yeah, I'm fine. Like, it's no consequence. It's a threat to that control. And that's why they don't like what I'm saying, is because I'm threatening the illusion of control, which we all want. We're all enticed by it. But if we can get to the other side of it and realize, I didn't have control, that's how you, ironically enough, gain more influence and understanding about what's really in control. Excuse me here. Here's an interesting question. Let me address this real quick. Champ in the making. Hey, Matt, what's your advice for a young man to move to a different country? I thought about getting it just right, but it didn't exist. Should I just book me a ticket and try to figure it out there? That's a good question. Well, you want to have some degree of a plan. I've made two big moves in my life. The first move was when I studied abroad in Japan in college. So that was me moving to another country. And that was really easy because I had a study abroad program that took care of everything for me. Here's where you live. Here's where you go to school. Here's your bus pass, everything. We took care of it for you. That was real easy, right? So you want to have some degree of research and idea of what you can do, more importantly, to support yourself when you're there. Okay, that's the biggest part. What are you going to do financially to support yourself? Because if you've got that, the rest of the stuff you can work on. But if you don't have the support structure, financial support structure, everything else is going to be 10 times harder. But the other time that I moved cross country here to Colorado, and that was the direct opposite. I literally moved with hardly any plan whatsoever. And I don't advise that at all, because that was a complete shit show for years to get on my feet. In fact, I'm still paying off debt right now from the 8 years ago that I incurred from moving out here, not having a job, living on credit cards, trying to get my foot in the door, granted, I have, a very unstable profession in fitness. Fitness is not the career you join if you like things like, expensive hobbies like paying rent and being able to buy groceries and stuff. But it's a very hard thing to make a living in. So that's why I was behind the eight ball financially for so long, which is why that advice there. But yeah, if you've got a support structure, or you have folks who you can rely on as well. You've got it made. It takes a while to establish those social connections. It takes a couple of years. So a friend of mine is a venerable globetrotter. She moves like every 2 years to a different state, different country. And she gave me the best advice. She's like, give it 2 years. You have to give a new location at least 18 months to know if it's right for you. Because she's like, for the first year at least, it's going to feel like you made a mistake. You left a lot of things, and now you're in this place where you've got almost nothing for connections and social connections and things like that. Maybe it'll be better for you. I hope so. But it can be a while, so you've got to be patient with it. But it's true what you hear on social media. It's very hard to move to a different state, much less a different country. But boy, if there's ever a life hack that is going to level you up into a much stronger, more independent, more valuable individual in society, it's doing that. I commend your courage for doing that. That takes a lot to move to a different country. Bravo, bravo. All right, so, oh boy, tea's running out. All right, folks, gonna have to start wrapping this up a little bit here. Let's answer some more questions here. Joni's asking, do you think there's merit to trying to lose weight fat or faster, steeper caloric deficit, and so on? So here's your new thing to look at. Metabolic phenotype, okay? One of the things you're going to run into in the quest for weight loss is this idea that your body will adapt to whatever changes you throw at it to prevent weight loss, right? You eat less, your metabolism crashes, all these sorts of things. Stronger by Science goes into great depth on this. Highly recommend checking out their podcasts on metabolic phenotypes and stuff. This adaptation is inevitable. Everything you do to lose weight is going to eventually no longer work. Everything. There's no such thing as sustainable, consistent weight loss under any circumstance. And that's because whenever we change our diet or a workout program or whatever, and we have a caloric deficit, we kick off adaptation, okay? And weight loss is part of that adaptation. But remember, the fundamental approach to fitness teaches us that the entire point of adaptation is to return us to a state of homeostasis. Excuse me. Meaning you stop losing weight. You get to survive under those new conditions. Now, generally, when we go with a more aggressive approach to weight loss, we create a faster adaptation to it. It is faster in the short term, but it's much more severe for the body to adapt quickly to it, which means you may lose more weight in the short term, but you're going to hit that homeostatic set point faster. So some people like that. Some people like the slow and steady wins the race. But the biggest thing to always keep in mind is what sort of habits can you easily maintain for the next 3 to 5 years? Always remember my rule. Adopt a new habit for 3 to 5 days. After 3 to 5 days, ask yourself, can you do it for 3 to 5 weeks? After 3 to 5 weeks, ask yourself, can you do it for 3 to 5 months? After 3 to 5 months, ask yourself, can you do it for the next 3 to 5 years? The answer at each one of those stages had better damn well be, oh yeah, no problem. I could definitely do that. It's not hard. If it is anything other than that, you're in serious trouble. Because the only way you stand a chance of getting what you want is if you have habits that you can maintain with relatively little effort. It is the only chance you've got. But when we go very aggressive with something, and we're like, if I really knuckle down and I really have a steep deficit and I really kill myself in the gym, then yeah, you can do that short term. Anybody can kill themselves in the gym short term. But nothing lasts for results if the habits don't last. So you have to have that long-term approach. Now, a lot of times, yeah, people are like, I'm just going to go real strict for like 2 months and then I'm going to scale back. Great, that's fine too. But that better be in the plan. It's like, I only got to do this for 6 weeks and then I'm going to scale back, because any aggressive approach that you have that you cannot maintain will fail. It will end, and you're probably going to rebound the other way from it. And it's not going to work very well. And then you set up this yo-yo effect sort of thing. So fast and hard is great, but don't expect it to last, because it has to last. Ultimately, the ability to get into your result that you want in anything in fitness is what kind of habits can you maintain with relative ease, right? What can you do and be like, yeah, this is not hard. This whole fitness thing, especially weight loss, should get easier over time to the point where it's almost effortless, not harder. And if it's getting harder, something's really wrong, like really, really wrong. So, all right. So, talking about diet, we've got our caloric intake, fat, protein, carbohydrates. All three matter. It's not all one or the other. You know, you get a lot of that from the low carb gurus. Fat doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It's 9 calories per gram. It certainly does. Protein, but also don't neglect alcohol. Alcohol is 7 calories per gram, give or take, depending on the source. So that's also a contributing factor as well that a lot of people like to kind of sweep under the rug a little bit. So all of those are important. Now, yes, of course, there's ways we can look at the influences to different things. Is protein a different influence than carbohydrate? Yes. Is a steak a different influence than pasta? Yes. Is olive oil a different influence than butter? Yes. So we can nitpick foods up to the ninth, right? We can really dial this stuff in and really like figure out different ways that different foods and different ingredients and different ratios and stuff matter. But at the end of the day, it's probably not that much of something that's worth the effort. It's not really something that is going to make that much difference. One of the biggest ways that people twist this stuff around is if you ever read Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Body book, he's got that chart in there of like, you know, what happened to people on the low fat diet, you know, low carb diet, low protein diet. And it shows, you know, they gained this weight and they lost this weight and they did this and sort of thing. They often turn to that chart and said, see, the people on the really low carbohydrate, high fat diet lost the most weight. But what they're not realizing from that chart is that the people who did lose the most weight only lost 0.5 pound over 6 weeks, give or take. I'm kind of trying to remember the numbers. And they had like a 90% fat diet. It's like, what are they, just drinking olive oil and butter? They had to take their diet to such a massive extreme in order to get a result that, to me, that shows it wasn't very effective. A habit that you need to take to an extreme to produce even a modest result is not an effective habit because it takes a lot to produce a little. So I always say, don't overthink this stuff. When it comes to diet, have a fairly balanced diet. My 3P strategy works for this beautifully. Every meal, plant, protein, and portion control. Every meal, just do that. Eat whatever you want. I don't want you losing sleep over like carbs or sugar and stuff like that. No joke. I once had this client come in and we had like a 20-hour conversation about which berries should she put with her oatmeal in the morning. It's like, okay, I've read that raspberries have a little bit more fructose than strawberries, but strawberries have a higher sugar content overall. And we're talking 2 grams or something of difference. And at the end of the 20 minutes, I was like, just eat whatever. I don't care. You're nitpicking this sucker so much to death that you're putting in effort that's not going to produce any real meaningful result. So my 3P strategy is where I always tell people to start. Plant, protein, portion control, every single meal. Eat enough to satisfy, not so much that you're getting full. Have a good protein source, some plant-based food, just for the nutritional value of it. And that right there will probably take care of most everything else. From there on, it's just tweaks. It's just little bits of tweaks and stuff. Don't get lost into the macronutrient ratios and stuff like that, that overall probably don't matter all that much. Here's another case example. As a Orion, what foods are good for anti-inflammatory in the neck and back? Don't worry about the foods in that. If you have inflammation in those areas, it's not because of what you're eating. Okay? That's one of those things. It's, again, a lot of times people will get really hung up on inflammation. Inflammation is not a bad thing, my friends. It's a natural part of this process. We're supposed to be subjecting the body to inflammatory stimuli all the time to some degree. Happens when we exercise, happens when we go out in sunlight, happens when we expose the body to changes in temperature. Inflammation is not a bad thing. Chronic, high elevated levels of inflammation is. And for that, you want to understand what's the source of it. Now, when you're talking about in the neck and the back, I would say it's probably a muscle tension thing. There's something about the forces going through your body are creating that inflammation. So you're probably not going to be able to address it with food. Chiropractic, physical therapy, muscle imbalances, things like that. That's probably where I would start looking instead. It's probably not going to be addressed with lower carb or something. It could help, sure, maybe a little bit, but let's not beat around the bush here. Let's go directly after what you want in order to fix the problem rather than put a little Band-Aid over it. Prod is asking, hey Matt, how come rolling knots in the shoulder blade help me neck and back pain from ring dip strains? Work great for me. No doc needed. Painful to roll them out though. So again, you've got knots in your muscles. Okay. Muscle knots are usually from chronic tension in a muscle that's not moving. And this is one of the biggest problems with back activation is most of us have very little activation of movement in our shoulders. And I would bet anything it's not from your ring dips at all. The ring dips, like a lot of times when people have a pain from doing an exercise, it's not from the exercise. It's being exposed by the exercise. So the ring dips are not causing that back pain. If anything, I know people who've had pain alleviated from that. Exercise should be doing the same thing as the rolling is doing. Right there. The rolling is somehow taking care of the pain that should be addressed in the exercise. So what I would recommend is not to stop the rolling. If it's working, do it, of course. But my guess is that you're not using and moving your shoulder blades very much in all of your other upper body exercises. You're all locked up. When you're doing push-ups, your back is locked up. You're doing pull-ups, you're locked up. You're all Uncle Fester. You're Frankensteining. You're Dr. Eviling with everything. You're all locked up. When we do our upper body movements, we want to be really moving the shoulders a lot. Same with pull-ups. All the way elevated, all the way pulled down. Dips are a bit of an exception. You want to lock those shoulders in place when you're doing dips for the most part. But I would bet anything that if you got a lot more scapular movement and activation in those muscles throughout all of your other exercises, I bet you those knots wouldn't form in the first place. Probably. Also look at other just daily habits. If you're like this all day, that's causing your knots, and then it's getting exposed by your dips. Let's see, what else can we address here? I love these comments. Some seriously irresponsible and patently incorrect advice. Give me details. What am I wrong on? Let's hash it out. What am I missing? What am I missing on things? I can't cover everything here, folks. So if you have questions about something that I'm not addressing, let me address it and squash these bugs dead. So what are thoughts on meat and using vegan meat as a replacement? So this is my little comedy routine that I have sometimes with my clients. I was like, I don't understand things like tofurkey and vegan meat. Like I've never eaten broccoli and thought I want this to be like a steak, or the other way around. I've never eaten steak and wished it was like vegetables. Why are vegans trying to make vegetables like meat? No one ever eats meat and wish it was like vegetables. So it's just my little shtick there. It's like, I'm not a fan. If I was vegan, I wouldn't be doing any of the fake meat stuff. None of that. Because if you want to give up meat, like all of it. Don't try to eat meat. That to me, it tells me the allure and the appeal of meat is so great that even people who give up meat still want to eat meat. They want the experience of it, the taste, the flavor, and everything like that. So like most things, I always tell people, base it on preference. If you want to give up meat for whatever reason, religious reasons, ethical reasons, great, go for it. Make sure your diet's dialed in because you can still get a lot of great nutrients and things without it. You don't need it. Absolutely not. But if you want to give it up, give it up. But if you don't want to give it up, don't worry about it. If anything, my stance on it, like, what about the environmental things? So like, if we really want to make an environmental impact, then we need to promote the more environmentally responsible ways to produce meat. We do that by supporting those businesses. We do that by supporting that form of agriculture, not abstaining from that type of agriculture. Vote with your dollars, as it were. So, it's fine, but put it in your diet as you prefer. I'm not going to say you have to have it. I'm not saying you have to give it up either. It's like many things in fitness. Go with something that is on a preference sort of thing, and have it fit into your life, into your diet, the way that you want it to fit. It's not about what you should do. It's what do you want to do? And then you go from there. All right. Boy, I hope my voice is, the fact that I've got people even listening to me right now is much appreciated. Because my voice, it sounds terrible to me. That's crazy. But a couple more questions here. What are your thoughts on fat burners? I know it's not directed to me, but I love that thing. There's no such thing as a fat burner, first and foremost, because again, we're already burning it. You want to know what a fat burner is? The human body. I am a fat burner. I am burning fat right now. Whenever we have a quote fat burner or drug or something that burns fat, it does so of two ways. One is it increases our caloric expenditure, and the best by far fat burner out there, by far. There is a drug out there for burning more fat. There is a drug out there that is very effective. It's very cheap. It's pretty safe. It's readily available. What is it? Caffeine. Caffeine is by far the most researched and effective way to increase your caloric expenditure, just naturally. So almost every fat burner out there is nothing more than caffeine pills. It's this, herbs and spices and all these things that we've got. And it's like, no, it's caffeine. Caffeine is always the answer to every fat burning pill out there. Just have yourself a cup of coffee or my fast lane tea. It's the same thing. It's probably better for you too. So, use it, but don't abuse it. Is it going to do much? Not really. It's just going to make me a little bit more active. It's going to maybe create a tipping point so I go out for a walk instead of sit and watch TV. And always remember too, that caffeine, anything that kind of elevates you up is going to also reduce appetite. And that's the biggest one right there, is most fat burners, sometimes they'll try to get your appetite down, increase your energy, appetite down. I always tell people when they're looking to lose weight, the most important thing by far is your energy level, by far. Because when your energy level goes up, your activity level and your ability to be burning calories goes up and your appetite goes down. Think of times when you're excited. It's the same thing. And it's just tipping that caloric balance. It's an influence to the caloric balance. They call it fat burners because that's a marketing thing. Does it burn fat? No. There's no such thing as a fat burner. There's no such thing as a pill that makes you burn more fat. There's only things that kind of just stimulate you up a little bit, like caffeine, and then you be more active and you eat less. That's why it's a quote fat burner, but it's not actually a, burning fat sort of thing. Let's see. A couple more things here. Ray is asking, what's the difference between tension or activation that you talk about in your videos versus the lockdown muscles? Just explained a few minutes ago. Nothing. It's just the same thing. Tension, activation, locking down. That's just me locking down my shoulder blades, using my lats, my traps to forcefully depress my shoulder blades. Same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's no difference between those sorts of things. Man, I was hoping that guy would come back. I came here to poop. Yeah, with a screen name like that, I would take him seriously, sure. But he didn't follow me up. I'm so disappointed in that. I'm always kind of disappointed by that. And I call those folks skippers, by the way. People who sometimes they come on and they comment on my YouTube channel, how I don't know what I'm talking about and stuff like that. They're skippers because they come in and they spend about that much time looking at my stuff, so they have no idea what I'm talking about. And they think I don't know what I'm talking about. And then they leave real quick. They're like a skipping stone on the water. They get about 3 millimeters of depth into my topics, and then they leave because they can't stand me, because they don't have the stomach to really investigate what the heck I'm actually talking about. But because I want that. I want to know, what am I missing? Where am I still not addressing things? I want to cover every base, but they never have the courage to stick around. Mark is asking, what do you prefer to maintain flexibility? I like this a lot. So flexibility, I like movements that require flexibility. So shifting movements in particular, like the shifting squats I talk about in grindstone calisthenics, love that sort of thing because it promotes stability, it promotes strength, and it promotes flexibility. So it's instead of stretching, excuse me, a muscle elongated position, it's about moving through that elongated position. So things that employ the shifting, like shifting squats, shifting lunges, for example, a lot of the crawling movements that I implement are really good for this. The Elements program from Gold Medal Bodies, gmbi.io, their Elements program, it's great for mobility. Wonderful. Their monkey crawl alone is wonderful for hip mobility. Did wonders for me. So shifting work, moving work, things that move you through a big range of motion are what I much prefer. All right, last one here. Azia and Ryan, love your kitty cat avatar, by the way. Last question for now. I have a slipped disc in my neck. Aha, here we go. Not pinch. I've lost 30 pounds from not working out. My neck is slowly recovering. Are light workouts okay 3 times a week? I always tell people activity is always fine, but obey pain. Don't do things that are aggravating it. See if, I'm assuming you have a doctor or a healthcare professional, physical therapist, what type of activities or applications of force against the body are going to be problematic, and avoid that type of thing. So you may, for example, say, okay, twisting and rotating things could be problematic, or things that have your head supported in a certain angle could be problematic. Get clear on the things that are going to be harsh and something that you shouldn't be doing, and then work and program your workouts around those things. But yeah, I'm always a fan of, be active in any way you can. Don't let an injury or something like that stop you. Be active, because we all have limitations. Everybody's got limitations of what they can do. So you don't want to be like, oh, I've got this limitation, I can't do anything. No, I have this limitation, and you work around it. You work with it. James is saying, Matt, vegans are choosing not to support exploitation of animals. Yes, animal cruelty. Some still want the taste of meat. Not all. I think fake meat is seen as junk food. Whole foods are best. It depends. I'm not a believer in the idea of junk food at all, because the healthiness of a food depends on your ability to use it in a productive way, right? You talk to a bike racer, and a candy bar is superfood, because in a bike race, whole food is the last thing you want. You want something that's quick and easy to digest. So it gives you a much clearer perspective on what is actually healthy and what is not, based on your circumstances, versus a dogmatic approach. So the whole fake meat sort of thing can still be great. It's still fine and stuff. I just say it as like a joke kind of deal. So in that regard, you bring up an excellent point. Some people are giving up meat, not because they don't want meat in their diet. They do want meat in their diet. They're just giving up the exploitation of the animals and stuff. I totally can get behind that. So when, they're using the fake meat, great, awesome. If that's less exploitation, it's more environmentally sustainable and stuff, I only see that as a win. That's a good thing. Excellent point, James. Thanks for bringing it up. So, all right, I am going to take off, folks, and probably drink a lot of tea and not talk for the rest of the day. But thank you, everybody, so much for coming on. I do appreciate it. I promise my voice will be back in shape. I am actually going to be in the mountains next week, so this podcast may not be happening, but I promise, as always, I will record something beforehand and distribute it through the podcast directories, so you'll still have an audio podcast to listen to as well. So I will go and leave you adieu. Thank you so much, everybody. Again, links down below that helps support the show. And my next book on progressive and weighted calisthenics will be coming out probably in the next 48 hours on Kindle and week on paperback. So keep an eye on the Red Delta Project Instagram. Link is down below for that. on the announcement for when that's coming out. All right, folks, thank you very much. Talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.